Love that.
How did you find Sophia? I'm going to be doing a lot of talking, but if you have a question, please jump in.
We do have comments, but yes.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Get the comments before I get a
Okay,
question.
yeah, because it's backing up. Like, whoa.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, let me find out. Okay, so Jabo says pinball convention this weekend for me and Marvel at Pintastic New England. You guys should check it out. Thank you, Jabo. I
Thank
did
you.
not know
Somebody
that.
was talking about that this weekend at another show I was in. I may want
Oh,
to try to check that out if I can.
okay, yeah, awesome. Good to know. Thank you, Jabo. Well, Rose actually knows. Rose knows a lot of people.
Yeah, Rose knows a lot of people.
I read that one. Hi,
And
Dick.
Rose knows
Happy
Dick.
Monday.
Yeah.
Dang. Okay, good one. All right. Okay.
Hi, Sakaro.
Goro definitely gives a bad guy
Definitely
Okay,
gives
we'll
it.
talk.
vibe. Oh, vibe.
We'll talk about my bad guy vibes in a bit. I got stories.
Hi, E Singer. How's it going? Mango says we don't need Lewis any more angrier.
No, no, we do not.
Jabo says they see Sophia and they run to her. Aw,
Yeah, they
thank
do.
you, Jabo.
They do.
Jar Jar, hello everybody.
Hey,
Hi,
Jar
Jar
Jar Jeremy in
Jar.
the house.
By the power of Grayskull.
Of the power. Sakara says him angry isn't very menacing.
All right.
It's a great animated series for new fans.
Thank you, Jabo.
Let me know you're here. That's the emote. Hello, Jar Jar. I think it changed a lot how they do line reading after the pandemic.
Oh, that was actually before the pandemic that we recorded that series. Yeah, but anyway,
Oh, interesting. Dick is such a great guy. He helped me set up the Plastic City Comic Con, and I told him that he was the talent.
that's how I met Jabo and Ty. I got in the parking lot the
Oh,
same time they did, and I saw they had a bunch of stuff going in. So I just went over and asked if they needed a hand,
oh, that's really
and
nice of you to do.
we became fast friends right there.
Wow.
Heck yeah, let's go. Jar Jar, who doesn't know Dick?
Damn right, Jar Jar.
I was talking about the role on FBI. What?
Okay. Did you see it, Sarkaro? If not, you need to watch it after this show.
How did you? How do you go about finding the voice for each character? Do you look at? Do you see a sketch? Do you see what the character looks like? Do you find a sketch? Um, how do you find each voice? Because I want to talk about Vampire. I want to talk about
Sure.
Diablo. I want to.
Dracula.
Yeah,
No, but I will after the
I want to
show.
talk about Dracula. I want to talk about each the video games you worked on. I want to talk about each of the animated series that you worked on. How do you find each voice for each character that you play?
Well, I would say that the question I am most often asked when I'm at a con is from people who are interested in being voice actors. And they say, how do you become a voice actor? My answer to that is, if you want to be a voice actor, first be an actor. Now, what I mean by that is you do high school theater, community theater, college theater, you do student film, you do short film, you do feature film if you can get on a set, you do TV shows, you do webisodes, you do whatever you can to get in front of a camera. And then when you can say, yes, I am an actor, when you're taking classes and you're learning the craft of acting, then you can take a crack at voice acting. The reason being because when you're a voice actor, you don't have costumes, you don't have sets, you don't have props, and sometimes you don't have anybody else to play with, opposite, or against. So you have to develop certain abilities, among them visualization and sense memory. And I'll tell you a couple stories about how that came into play with a couple of the roles that I got.
Okay.
And with all of that, you really have to be able to very quickly step into the head, step into the life of the character that you're creating. Some people think that it's just about doing impressions, doing impersonations. No, we actually have to create original characters if we want to get hired. Case in point, the first big game that I recorded was World of Warcraft.
Ooh.
This was, I think, back in '09 or 2010 when it finally came out. But my agent had sent me into New York for a couple of other auditions, and one of them was for, I thought was a supermarket. I get into the booth, and the engineer says, okay, I want you to think of this as an Asian Kmart.
What?
My words exactly. And I said, in my head, I'm thinking, what made you think that I was in any way qualified for that role? But instead, being the consummate professional that I am, I said, okay, Asian, what are you thinking? Japanese, Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, Thai, Korean? What? And he said, just sound Asian.
Oh.
So first, offensive. But so I just laid down a couple tracks that sounded like a bad Jackie Chan, and I walked out. I knew I would never hear from those people again and was glad of it. But at these casting studios, there are usually like 5 or 6 of them on the same floor, right? So next door, I see a sign that says World of Warcraft. So I tiddly on over and I grab a side, which is like a short script, which describes the character that you're reading for, and it has the lines on it. And it said, Worgen, a race of 7-foot-tall sentient werewolf warriors. Ooh. So I get on the phone, Ann, can you get me in that room? And an hour later, my agent did get me into that room. During that hour, I had time to think about, okay, what am I learning from these lines? They really don't tell me much. So I figured out, okay, this is a race of people who are cursed with lycanthropy. And somehow they managed to weaponize this curse for their own good, for the defense of their realm. Okay, then something starts forming in my mind, and I'm thinking, okay, these people always have to walk the line between human reasoning and the ferocity of the wolf. And it's the tension between those two sides that holds them together, that holds the curse into focus, that allows them to harness and channel their rage. So I went in, thank you, and scene. So I went in and I did the lines just that way, and a couple days later my agent called back and said, you booked it. So I went back into the studio later that week. I'm ready to start howling and growling. I walk in, Andrea Toyas, who's the voice director for Blizzard Entertainment, said, sit. She told the Worgen to sit. So I did. I sat down and she said, I want to play something for you. And on the big, gorgeous sound system in this room, she played the orchestral theme to the Worgen race, to the realm of Gilneas. And I'm listening to it, and I'm like, okay. I got it now. So that gave even more color and more dimension to what I was going to do. And of course, they had artwork at that point, so I was able to see these gigantic werewolves in armor with swords and axes. They had booked me for, I believe, a 7-hour session.
Oh, wow.
That day, and I'm wondering, what the hell can I possibly do for 7 hours? How many lines does this guy have in the game? And they brought in a sheet of lines, which we got through in like maybe an hour, 90 minutes. And I'm like, well, okay, looks like I get the rest of the day. No, because then the engineer came back and he had some more sheets of paper, and he sat him down and said, and now we fight. When you are recording really any game that has any violence in it at all, you have to make fight sounds. Mm-hmm. So again, I'm in a room that's actually smaller than the one I'm in now. It's a studio, just me and the old microphone. I have to fight. I have to hit, and I have to be hit. Okay? So I have to punch, and I have to take a punch. I have to claw, and I have to take a claw. And then we move to a dagger. And then to a short sword, then to a long sword, then to a broadsword, then to a single axe, then to a double axe, then to a battle axe, then to a giant double battle axe thing that what I'm doing the whole time, I'm handling these weapons and these attacks. There's nothing in my hand except what I imagine is there. So I'm moving like I'm chopping the axe and like I'm bringing down the sword, or like I'm getting wounded. 5 hours later, the guy says, and now you die. And I'm thinking, yes, I could. Right now, I could, because there's multiple takes on all those weapons, all those reactions, every sound that an actor makes in a game has to be recorded in that session. So I gave some very realistic death throws for the Worgen, and I still brought the session in early, but I was walking up Madison Avenue, one very happy but wrung out Worgen. So that was how I got that game. So yeah, the visualization, the sense memory, the imagination. There was another game I was doing called The Mage's Tale, I think it was for Oculus, where I was hired to play an ancient Scottish wizard who'd been betrayed by his evil apprentice. So that session was supposed to be out all those lines and shouting a bunch of spells that sounded like the menu at Olive Garden. And again, I brought the session in early, and I said, well, what else you got? And he said, well, we need an undead necromancer. I said, okay, you got any artwork? He said, no. He's basically a skeleton in a robe, but he's not the Grim Reaper. He's an undead necromancer. So I start thinking out loud in the booth. Okay, so he's a necromancer. He's a powerful sorcerer. He can raise the dead. But he's an undead necromancer. He raised himself. He must be an incredibly powerful sorcerer. Now, he's a skeleton. All his flesh and his organs and ligaments and everything have rotted away, but he wears a robe, so he still possesses some sort of human vanity. And he has lines. How does he speak? He doesn't have a diaphragm, he doesn't have lungs, he doesn't have vocal cords, he doesn't have a tongue. So I was reckoning out loud that, wait a minute, he's a very powerful sorcerer. So what he is doing is remembering the mechanism of speech from when he was alive. And he is using his powers to draw air in where his diaphragm used to be. And he's forcing it up through his ribcage, up through where his vocal cords used to be, and forcing it through the tongue and the teeth and the nasal area where the sounds are formed. And it takes a great deal of effort.
That's amazing. I love
They
that.
said,
Oh my
they said
God.
get your ass back in the studio. And so I booked a second gig that day.
That's amazing.
So if you're going to ask that question,
Like Skeletor.
how do you become a voice actor? Be an actor.
Yep.
I am looking for our crowd right here at wow, that was
Applause in the recording studio. It's not permitted.
wow, that was incredible. And that was the best explanation we have ever had
Yeah.
on how someone would find their voice.
I love that.
I know.
Yeah,
that was-
Transformers was a fun process too for finding the characters there. The first time I auditioned for the show, they brought me in for Optimus Prime.
Whoa, really?
That's what I said once I regained consciousness, and
Wow.
I went. Now I do a credible Prime.
Okay.
Autobots, roll out! But I didn't get booked for that.
Clip
And
it.
I was fine with that. I was fine with that because I did not want to be the guy who screwed up Optimus Prime.
Okay.
But still, it was like, I was a fan starting in 1984. Watching that show is what made me want to be a voice actor. So just to be asked to audition for that role,
That's a lot of pressure.
it was pressure, but it was good enough. It was like, thank you, I appreciate
That's
that.
an honor.
2 weeks later, my agent calls back and says they want to hear you for Megatron. At last, the role I was born to play. So I went back in and I auditioned for Megatron and a couple of other roles. I didn't get Megatron, but I got the other roles. So I was cast as Prowl, who was another one of the G1 Transformers from '84.
Yeah.
They brought him back for this series. So that was my brand name character that I got to be. And they also, in the Cyberverse series, if you haven't watched it, they added some new characters that come from other parts of the Transformers universe. A character named Maccadam, who they dug up out of the British Marvel comics from the 90s.